What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back with another MMA superstar, Billy Quarantillo, joining us here on Junkie Radio. He's got a fight coming up against Alexander Hernandez at UFC 287. Takes place on December 10th here in Las Vegas, the fight capital of the world. What's going on, Billy? How are you?
I'm doing great, Gorgeous George. Thanks for having me.
Always fun to have you because you're a thinker. You know what I mean? You're not just showing up to bust some brain cells on the other person. I feel like you're like a chess player that shows up to bust some brain cells, but to challenge himself. You remind me of the way Randy Couture talks about the game, figuring out the puzzle.
Yeah, I agree. I think humans they have an advantage over every other animal because of our brains, not necessarily because of our strength or size. And I feel like I take that into a lot of fights that, maybe I'm not the most athletic fighter, but if I can figure out a way to win, and usually I've been pretty successful figuring out a way to win, not just with my size or strength, but with my brain.
I think enough of us have Hulu and Netflix and YouTube, and we've seen enough documentaries that involve like the hunt, right? Maybe, I don't know. Hopefully you're not an animal activist. I'm not trying to go down that road, but have you ever watched a certain animal and thought, yeah, I kind of move like that animal, or think or hunt like that animal?
Yeah, actually, ironically, so when I first moved to Tampa, one of my jiu-jitsu coaches has this real badass tattoo, and it's actually it was like this giant octopus, and it's eating a shark. And I asked him about it, and he explained to me this story about this aquarium. I believe it was in Washington, and I looked it up and everything, and it was in the zoo, and it basically was talking about or an aquarium. I'm sorry. And it was talking about how they had this giant open water, and they had a couple sharks in there, and one of the sharks disappeared, and they couldn't figure out where it went. Like what happened to it. And they looked it up, and they actually found out that this octopus was basically ate this shark. It was like a smaller shark, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, especially with the jiu-jitsu culture. Everyone says they're like, the ground is my ocean and I'm just a shark. And I love that idea of this octopus being able to take a shark underwater because it's real deep in the water. The shark really can't see it. So I like how it just wraps things up. And I consider my jiu-jitsu very similar to that. That's why a lot of people call me Billy the Squid. My unofficial nickname, Billy the Squid, it really comes from that idea. So I would say, like an octopus, a squid type creature, bringing my opponents into deep waters, wrapping them up, using my jiu-jitsu, and getting the job done.
I love it. All right, I'm glad I asked that question. And you said it was Washington, the state, right?
I believe so. I could be wrong. It was either I believe it was in Seattle, and I know it's on YouTube. It's really cool. It's a quick little YouTube thing, and it influenced my jiu-jitsu instructor to get the tattoo. And I actually have a painting. You can't really see it in here. It's over to the side. But I told one of my artist friends about it, and they drew me this painting of this octopus eating a shark, and it's very inspiring to me, and I have it on my wall here in my office.
Billy the Squid, I like it. Not to get sidetracked, but I don't know if you follow NHL hockey at all.
A little bit.
Have a new team called the Kraken up in Seattle, and I was like, I had to look it up. What the hell's the Kraken?
Yeah.
It's a squid. So
yes,
who knows? Maybe that's this whole thing's about that or whatever. But
yeah, maybe they got it from that incident.
Flows, yeah.
Hey George, don't you have a squid right behind you? Like literally right behind you?
There you go.
Wow, look at that. See, that might be your spirit animal too.
Well, I got this because I have a buddy named Sammy the Squid, and he's a good buddy, and
yeah.
So he used to prognosticate games, and we used to rub the squid for good luck, and it would come through a lot. So I think I shifted. There's a couple squids, but the other one got lost or something. So that every once in a while, when a game's tight, I might rub the squid a little bit for good luck.
Nice. I dig it.
Yeah. Hey, all right. So let me ask you something here. Now I'm going to all of a sudden ruin the party, but you came out of Contender Series. And you won 3 in a row. Everything's flowing, right? And then since then, you've traded wins and losses. And I wanted to ask you, do you attribute that more to maybe what's happened in the octagon or outside the octagon, meaning the mental game, your personal life, preparation, because man, the way you came out, like you had really, really nice record, still do,
Yep.
really nice record. And like I say, these wins, they build your confidence. And all of a sudden, sometimes someone can get caught slipping a little bit. But how would you answer that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that a little bit of everything. Those first fights were my first UFC debut. It was a great stylistic matchup for me. And then I had those next few fights at the Apex. And I think this last loss against Shane Burgos, it was just a really tough fight. I felt like it was such a close fight. It's unfortunate that I wasn't able to take him out and finish him, but I think I can take a lot from those losses. The Gavin Tucker loss and the Shane Burgos loss. I can take a lot from that and help myself moving forward, take those losses and learn from them and get back on that winning track, because I definitely feel like I have that same fire that I had when I first got into the UFC. I had a chip on my shoulder getting, losing the Ultimate Fighter, basically being told that I wasn't good enough for the UFC at that time, having to go on an 8-fight winning streak, up through my UFC, through the Contender Series, through all of that. But I think going into this fight, this reminds me a lot of when I was getting ready for the Gabriel Benitez fight, where I had a lot of off time. I had a lot of time to really prepare myself, both physically and mentally. I do have a newborn now too, so I got that dad strength going into this next fight. And I think I'm going to take a lot of stuff from those losses and use that to win this next fight.
Hey, Billy, so a lot of people know you not just from your fighting career, but you call fights too. You break down fights really well. You've actually done it for us before on our watch alongs. When you take yourself out of the fighter chair and put yourself in this chair, do you ever see things that kind of help you out with your fighting career?
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of my favorite reasons for doing stuff like that. Like anytime you guys call me and want me to break down fights, I always try to do my best job at it. The same with calling fights. The same with coaching. I still do a lot of coaching, which I'm obviously going to plan on doing post UFC career. I teach a beginner striking class. So the reason why that I haven't moved up, I've been asked to teach more advanced classes, but I really like teaching the fundamentals and getting back into all the basic stuff that help you really win fights and just mastering the fundamental stuff. So yeah, every time I'm breaking down fights, I'm watching that as, how would I beat me? How would I beat that person that I'm watching? And that all helps me, it all helps me mentally. That carries over into my UFC career and helps me when I'm matched up with a guy like Alexander Hernandez, who has a lot of different weapons. He has a lot of film study. I could do a lot of studying with his UFC career. He's had 9 fights in the UFC already. And yeah, I take every little thing I could do to get that advantage. Like I said, a lot of it's mental. A lot of the stuff that I can take and use to win these next fights is what I'm going to do.
I've always been a fan of your energy outside the cage and inside the cage, but I've always wanted to ask you, how do you manage that energy? And because there's times in fights where you have to bring it down as well, right? How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting style that I have, and it's not a style that, like when I started training MMA, I wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to be like this pressure fighter. I'm going to throw 200 strikes a fight. I'm going to try to break my opponent. It was just kind of a thing that I just developed over the years, and I've kind of ran with it. But yeah, I don't feel like it's a style that is always necessary. So now I try to take the approach as, all right, there's a time where I need to pressure my opponent and try to wear him out. And then there's other times where I need to take my time and make sure I'm not slipping up too much. But I do like having that mentality, and I like having really good cardio. That's why I'm always doing conditioning pretty much every day. Like I'm about to head into a training session right after this. I like having a really good big gas tank. So I like using that in my fights as outside of my fights. I have a lot of energy. I talk a lot. And using that on and off the mats really helps me, and I've developed it over the years. It's not like this reckless style that I used to have as an amateur fighter. Now it's high pressure, but it's also controlled pressure.
Would you have wanted to fight in Orlando 1 week before? A couple hours away, maybe more people can get to your fight, or do you like being on a pay-per-view in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas?
Really funny you say that. So, as you probably know, I had to pull out of the first UFC fight that I've had to pull out of. I was supposed to fight Bill Elgio in the summertime, and my manager basically said, rest up. When you're rested and you're ready to go, let me know when you want to fight. And sure enough, it was a few weeks after that fight. I was still having a hard time recovering and doing all that. But then I heard about that Orlando card. And so I messaged my manager and said, I'm going to be good to go by December. Let's get on that Orlando card if we can. And he messaged me within a couple of hours and said, what do you think about Vegas against Alexander Hernandez? And I was like, oh man, it sucks, because I definitely wanted to get on that Orlando card. It's about an hour away from where I live here in Tampa. So yeah, that's the card I wanted to get on. It turned out to be a really good card. I'm really excited about that. A lot of people keep asking me if I'm going to go to it, but unfortunately, I just don't want to. I don't want to be distracted, and so I would have loved to have been on that card. We would have had a few hundred people that would have drove over there, but I'm cool with being in Vegas. I've flown out to Vegas a bunch of times. I've already been there twice this year, and I've fought there 7 times already, counting the Ultimate Fighter, counting the Contender Series, counting the UFC Apex fights. But this is my first UFC fight in Vegas with fans, so I'm super excited about it.
Was Orlando ever an option? And if so, was it a different opponent?
No, it wasn't. I felt like I wasn't really in a position to say no. I had to pull out of my fight with Bill Elgio in Long Island, which that would have been such a sick card. I got a bunch of friends in Long Island. So after I had to pull out of that fight, I didn't feel like I was in a position to go back and forth with the UFC. They pretty much asked me if I wanted to fight Alexander Hernandez in Vegas. I really liked the matchup, so I didn't really argue too much with them. I said, let's do it, and here we are.
So this will be the first time with the fans, you said, in Vegas.
Yeah, well, first time with more than a couple hundred fans, because I fought on at the Ultimate Fighter back in 2015. Right. Fought there twice, and then I fought in the Contender Series, and then I've had 4 more UFC fights at the Apex. So for a while it was Apex, and then finally after a post fight win, I just had to say, like, please let me fight with fans. This last fight was at MSG last year, and now I get to fight in front of fans in Vegas. So I'm just grateful to fight in front of fans. It didn't really matter where it was, but I don't want to look back on my career and only have Apex fights. I'm grateful that I was able to fight during the pandemic, but it's with fans. It's the UFC crowd that I'm looking for, so I can't wait for this one.
Do you always have the same walkout music, or do you switch it up?
So I actually always mix it up, and I was actually thinking about that today. I need a new walkout song, so I'm kind of looking. I was with my teammate Matt Frivola. I cornered him for his last fight last weekend at Madison Square Garden. And he had a dope song. He came out to one of the New York Mets closer song, with the Timmy trumpets. The crowd loved it. They were all amped up for it. Hometown kid with a hometown song. I absolutely loved that idea. So I need something creative. So I'm still on the fence with what I'm going to come out to. I've had a couple ideas, but I still have not chosen a walkout song yet.
He definitely appealed to the New York crowd with that song. Mm-hmm. So for you, is the song more about you, or you just want to connect with the fans or the city, or is there a strategy to it all?
Yeah, it's usually a little mix. So the MSG, I came out to like a 50 Cent song because when I was in high school, that was when, like G Unit and 50 Cent were like the shit. They were like the best, the best artist in the world, and he's a New York guy, and it was just a song that got me hyped up. So usually it's going to be either a song that either I like, or I kind of like a song that really gets people going. I'm thinking like more like a good beat, a good song that really gets everyone amped up. Since it's in Vegas, I'm not really connected to there's not really a lot of artists that I know about that are from Vegas, and usually the Vegas fights, people are traveling from all over, so there's not
Right.
really like that hometown song like we had at in New York City. There's a few Buffalo artists I really like Benny the Butcher, West Side Gun. Those are some of the Buffalo guys, but I don't know if there's any songs that I could really play that people will relate it to. So I'm still kind of on the fence, but I'll figure it out soon.
Is that the part of New York you're from? You're from Western New York?
Yes, yeah. I grew up in a small town called Lewiston, New York. It's like right outside of Buffalo. So I'm a diehard Bills fan. And yeah, that's where I grew up. That's who I would like to pay homage to. But I might want to wait until possibly fight in Buffalo in the UFC one day or something like that. So I'm still kind of on the fence for this fight. But it'll come to me.
Did your family and friends get hit hard by that snowstorm?
They did well, not as hard as so they're a little bit. They're in like kind of like a little crevice right outside of Buffalo. So they got hit with probably like maybe 1 or 2 feet of snow. But they didn't get hit as bad. I did have family that they were trying to go to the Bills game. They actually, I have my brothers live in Virginia. They actually went to go to the Bills game, and then that got switched to Detroit. So they weren't able to go to the Bills game. One of their flights got canceled. So like half of my brother's family wasn't able to go to Buffalo to visit. So it was kind of a cluster, but it was just a good reminder. That was one of the reasons I had to leave because I'm trying to train for these big fights. And when the whole town shuts down for a few, for weeks at a time, it's hard to be motivated to train. So I'm here in Tampa. I've been here since 2010, but I really miss everyone back at home. And I just booked my flight last night. I'm gonna go home for like the New Year's, and everyone's gonna be able to meet my baby and the newest member of the Q family.
That's when the baby will be born, like in the next few weeks or whatever.
The baby was already born, so I guess he's a 3 month old. He's in the other room right now.
Ooh, okay.
But yeah, that's obviously
Misheard.
extra motivation. But some of the family members haven't been able to travel down here to Tampa yet, so we're gonna bring him up there. Me and the missus are gonna bring him up to Buffalo so everyone can see him.
Wow. And you guys just experienced that hurricane. Was that tough with a newborn as well? Like a lot must have been going through your mind. Maybe do I have to leave the city, and how do I handle this, right? Or how was
Yeah,
it?
we got lucky. So it's one of those things that I know it's gonna crush Tampa one of these years. Every single year that I've lived here since 2010, every hurricane season, like, oh man, this is gonna be the hurricane. This is gonna be the one that wipes us out. This is gonna be the bad one, and everyone flees. And luckily, it hasn't been too bad. Even this one, like last minute, it kind of curved and went more towards like Fort Myers and like the Punta Gorda area. So we got lucky once again. Obviously, it was super stressful. My wife and it was crazy. I was actually in Vegas for a good part of it. I was actually training, helping Matt Frivola get ready for his fight. I was getting ready for my fight. And when I was supposed to come home, my flight got canceled. So I was obviously super worried for my wife and baby. They were with my wife's parents, and they went to their house in Valrico, which is a little bit east of off the coast a little bit. So we got super, super lucky. I was joking. I'm like, I'm never going to live this down if I left my wife and baby in a hurricane. Thank God it didn't hit Tampa too bad. Obviously, there was a lot of damage in the Fort Myers and other areas, but we got super lucky once again.
We had a cousin that was with us a few days before here in Vegas, a few days before that hurricane too, and she was like she wasn't really enjoying her vacation as much. I mean, she did, but
Yeah.
she's keeping an eye, on everything going back because she's I think inland about maybe a half hour, but Tampa's that area, where she's at, and she had a few videos of what it looked like, I guess, when it went through, and it was windy, trees were swaying and all that. There was some rain, but nothing like what you described with like what we saw those images and video. Fort Myers, Punta Gorda. That was devastating, man. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Glad it didn't hit you guys.
Yeah, we got lucky, and like I said though, every year, and every year it happens. We're like, oh man, this hurricane's coming right here, and it's gotten to the point where people just make jokes. A lot of people make jokes about it. A lot of people always leave town. They board everything up. And it's like the boy who cried wolf, where we keep getting lucky where it hasn't hit us. And one of these years, it's definitely going to hit us bad. So we're risking it by living here. But it's just, this is my home now, so I'm not going anywhere yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, Billy, it's always fun chatting with you, and I can't wait to watch the fight against Anthony Hernandez. Sorry, I keep saying Anthony. Alexander Hernandez, the great, at 155 pounds here in Las Vegas, UFC 282. You guys are on the prelims, right? I was trying to figure out if maybe they might squeeze you guys in as the opening fight or something like that. I'd love to see you guys on the opening fight, but I'm not able to tell, but it doesn't appear so, at least how Tapology has it listed. What have you heard?
Yeah, I've seen that we're on the prelims. I know they got some fun fights. They got that kid who he's like the youngest kid in UFC history. He's 18. They bumped him up before us, and Patty Pimblett. So they got some big names on there. But as of now, we're on the prelims. I definitely think we can steal the show, or we're one of those fights that they could bump up if anyone pulls out. But either way, they pay me the same whether it's the prelims or the main card. So I just need to go out there, make a statement, get a statement win, go get 2 or 3 paychecks, and come home to my family and enjoy this holiday season.
Yeah, and if you want to hear something about how just unpredictable that can be, these lineups, Chris Curtis, he's not even on the prelims or the featured prelims. He's on the early prelims. And his last fight, he was the co-main event in London. That card was pretty sick. That's the one with Blades and Aspinall. He fought Hermanson. He had like a 4-fight win streak, but yeah, he's on this fight card. He was a little bummed out that he's way down there, but there's a lot of depth on this card.
Yeah, funny you said that. I saw him in Vegas when I was over there, and they just announced his card. They just announced that he was on there, and I was joking with him. I'm like, oh man, I'm like, you're gonna steal my spot on the main card, and both of us are on the prelims now. So it is what it is, man. It's an opportunity for us both to make statements, and same thing with me. I went from Madison Square Garden main card to the early prelims. So it's all good. We know what we got to do, and the fans know. I think it's going to be one of those cards that you got to show up, watch the first fight to the last fight.
And are you one of those that, because I know they have a procedure, will you try your best to, shower, do media, and stay, or do they now shuttle the teams back to the hotel and you have no choice?
Yeah, they always, the last few fights that I've cornered and been to, they try to kick us right out. Like this MSG fight, they tossed us right out of there. I would love to stay, obviously, but if they make us leave, I'm there for work. So I'll go and handle my business, and then we'll go to the bar, and I'll link up with my family, and we'll watch the fight somewhere else.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for the time, and I hope you have a safe training camp, whatever's left of it, along with the weight cut. Safe travels back to Las Vegas. We'll see you in a few weeks.
All right, boys. Thanks for having me, like always. Take care.